Hi, this is Melanie Brotherton, Chapter 6, Accountability and Responsibility. Accountability must serve the vital purpose of safeguarding all students, making sure that they are valued in all areas. Accountability is mentioned in every document and national report and goals set for our nation as far back as 1978. Is found in the National Reports of a Nation at Risk in 1983, Goals 2000 of 1991, and again when it's revised in 1993, the No Child Left Behind in 2001, and Race to the Top in 2009. Each time that it is mentioned, there is a stronger emphasis on accountability. And some of the reports, it was mentioned several times. The term is also a significant factor in school improvement. It's a traditional word that is used and mentioned in keeping budgets transparent for taxpayers. It's used in the maintenance of high-stakes testing, numbers and percentages to indicate successes or failures of schools. Now, with accountability, it highlights in our nation reports, it highlights the gaps in instruction, bringing the word back to that it's vital in safeguarding for our students to make sure that they are valued in all areas of the school. While accountability is the traditional term that is used for attaining academic standards in schools, the other term that is not used enough in regard to education is responsibility. And that's according to Gross and Shapiro. Using the term, it can make perceive that it's more inclusive, placing an onus for success or failure of students' achievement on the society as a whole and not just on schools. For example, the success of a student learning their letters. Let's say that would also be the responsibility of the parent or guardian to reinforce that at home. It shouldn't just fall on the school, because the success of a child depends on what they are perceived, the education is perceived at home. If it's not valued, then they're not going to want to learn. If it's not reinforced, then it's not going to go into the long-term memory. They have to have some type of responsibility and be a shared concern with the school in order for their students to be successful. In case study 6.1, Rhetoric versus Reality, School Accountability and the NCLB Act, Courtney Swartz, the Director of Elementary Education, and Juan Ortiz, the Principal of Happy Valley Elementary, anticipated a large number of students to transfer after third grade. The students would be transferring from an urban school district. Their remedial services are no longer offered past second grade. The reasoning behind this, in most districts, they earmark monies to go towards, specific things. And if they've had successes, they will continue to do that until something happens to make them have to take those funds and put them someplace else. In this situation, K2 in elementary schools, they are learning to read. Third and up should be reading to learn. But since the students were coming from an urban school district, they knew that urban school districts, some of them, only get half of the funding per child that other schools get, so that those kids were not getting what they needed, and they already had that in their mindset. But since this money is already earmarked, they couldn't change what they had in the school system as far as extra people. They had a prior success of being ranked 5 out of the top 6. With this preparation of the new student population, they had staff development. They tried to prepare their staff for what was going to happen, with differentiated instruction and flexible grouping. Now, the flexible grouping They could do heterogeneous groups. They could do by learning styles. I've used the flexible grouping with introverts and extroverts, and it helps to bring out the best in both of them because they kind of complement each other. So actually, I believe that the school district did what they could to prepare their staff. You know, the teacher observation showed that in the class showed that the students were making good progress. And at this point, that's all that they would have would be teacher observations and maybe pre and post test. Well, one of the 5 schools scored slightly below. So they moved from the 4th to the 8th out of the 36 school districts. However, they still stayed in the top 20% of the country. The data did show what they thought, that was that the student transferred scored basic and below, and that made up 75% of the students that transferred was basic and below. The plans for the following year would be to earmark the money for remedial teachers to help with this decline in the scores. But then they have the public consequences, came out in the newspaper. So when it comes out in the newspaper, of course, as this chapter is about accountability and responsibility, the blame of the responsibility, they want to put it on the school and say that the school did not teach the curriculum. However, they didn't look at the fact that the students did come from an urban school district. They were already below when they got there, but that's what this entire chapter is about, is, there's another responsibility that had to happen before those students got to Happy Valley Elementary. Our questions for discussion: what do you consider to be the level of turbulence for the Thomas School District? I think the level of turbulence is moderate because it's a widespread issue with specific origins. What are the differences? What differences might exist between the level of turbulence for the administrators and the local parents? I think that the level of turbulence for the parents would be extreme because they think that their child's needs are not being met. In my opinion, the newspaper did purposely raise the level of turbulence in order to increase the sales. I don't know if they knew that the parents would react in this way, but newspapers are in the business to make sales. So when the news changed, they've always been the top 5 out of 6 schools. So when that news changed, that's news, that you want to report. However, I do think that in any news situation that both sides, they should have reached out to the school to see what happened before and what they did to try to meet the needs of the students. What actions can Dr. Schwartz and Mr. Ortiz take to lower the turbulence level? And in the short term, I think that it would be to be transparent. Show what they did with their school. They provided the professional development, which that's not news. They didn't turn that into the newspaper, but that is something that they did within their school, and that they tried to do differentiated instruction in flexible groups. For the long term, for both the local and national level, of course, they would need to earmark monies for the next year to be able to get remedial teachers in to help raise the 75% of the students that scored both basic and below basic on the test. How do policies based on statistics shape practice? Well, our policies are based on what's happening now, and that's what we do our policies around, is what our wants and needs are now. Do I think that the law will benefit those that is created for? at times, but that's why we reshape and redo our policies. Our laws are supposed to be created to protect our children. And sometimes there are gray areas that need to be addressed. Do you think that Dr. Schwartz and Mr. Ortiz care about the students in the Thompson School District? Absolutely. They knew that this was going to be a problem because their students were going to transfer from an urban school district, and they knew that the students would be behind. They already knew that they could not, at that particular year, because monies had already been earmarked and funding was not available for grades 3 and up, they provided professional development. They tried to prepare the teachers that they had there that were already there, instead of which they couldn't hire other staff. So I do think that they cared. How do you think they felt when they were accused of not attending to the needs of the students? I think they were probably devastated because but I also think that they could accept some of that responsibility, because it doesn't say that they brought parents in and explained to them where their child was and where that they needed to go with them and what they were doing at the time to help with this, because they expected the low scores. It sounds like that they were trying to do whatever they could in the classroom to meet the need of the students, but I think that they should had more of a communication with the parents. How can the transitions students be helped? You don't ever, when students transfer in, you never know what's going to happen. Like, what have they been exposed to, what they don't know. You don't know what kind of instruction that they have received before they entered a school district. So you really have to go with what that child needs and how you can meet it at that very moment. Do you think public schools should be held accountable for ensuring that all students achieve academic success? I think to a point that they should be held accountable, but there is also that responsibility of parents and guardians to make sure that their students' needs are being met. It cannot be just on the school, because like with transfers, you can have a student transfer in at 3rd grade and not know how to, identify their letters. What is the best way to hold public schools accountable? I think that the best way to hold public schools accountable is by growth, individual growth of students, because you cannot blanket and, one size fits all. It doesn't fit all, because all students are different. But if you look at the growth of a child, you can measure that. That's measurable. And I think that that's the best way to hold schools accountable, is by individual growth. Did that student show growth in areas of need? Given the climate described, what might happen to the turbulence level of one small piece of bad news about the school if it came to light at this time? I believe that it might cause other parents to cause concern. Even the parents could get, they could have confusion between the two, because the parents that are already there, their students had already there on the transfer students. It could be that transfer of that influx of students is taken away from their education. They could say that, because people take different points when things come out. They want to take their own point of view, whatever is going to fit their own personal need. So that could cause more parents to become outraged or get involved, but in different ways. It could be that, they think that what their school is doing by the flexible grouping, or adding more remediations, they're earmarking the monies for more remediations, would take away from their children. So that could go both ways. But I do think that the news, more bad news would cause a cascade to of the turbulence level to go up. Case study 6.2, competence versus ineptitude in an age of accountability. Dr. Smith, he's in a personnel meeting in the Lafayette School District, which were historically disturbing. Sometimes they would cause one building to compete against the other. He's going to provide adequate staffing to meet the demands of the No Child Left Behind legislation. He's requesting a math specialist to target mathematics instruction. He wants to employ this mathematics specialist because he, in the prior year, had hired a reading specialist, and the scores show that it was quite successful. He wants to change a building clerk to a proper secretary, extending her contract from 10 months to 12 months, and the extra time would be to handle the paperwork from the current legislation. He already has Miss Martin that has a 12-month contract, which is a former superintendent secretary who was enabled to make the transition from typewriter to computer. So she was classified as a teacher's aide and reassigned to Dr. Smith to work during the summer months. She kept her 12-month salary, so she would have to work those 12 months if she retains that time. When he goes to meet, he gets the mathematics instruction, but they start to question him over wanting to change the proper secretary to the 10 months to the 12 because he already has one assigned to him. The human resources questions his request because he already has the 12-month contract. So they ask him to switch out the two, where he can put Mrs. Smith, that was unable to even do the slow summer months, place her in the office during busier times, and document when she's not able to perform her duties. With this dilemma, he has to consider the paperwork for the No Child Left Behind, because the previous summer, the other clerk it took her a while to straighten up all the mistakes that Mrs. Martin made. He would also have to consider the disruption of the office, because the office it's like a well-oiled machine, according to the passage. And he also has to consider that the parents, the staff, they get what they need from the office. The students get what they need. And with someone not being able to handle the computer, it would be hard to get information out and about, maybe even to the classrooms, because she's unable to perform that. As he's thinking about this, Mrs. Martin comes in, and she quickly adds to the problem when she tells him that her son-in-law he just lost his job, and her family, her daughter and children, will be having to move in with them, letting him know that she's going to have to be financially helping her family. But in his mind, he knows that he has to document, because that's what he's been told to do by the superintendent. He's going to have to document so that they can get ready to dismiss her. Okay, what is the level of turbulence in this case for Dr. Smith? I believe it is severe. Mrs. Wilson, the level would have to be light, and Mrs. Martin at this time would probably have to be severe. What would create more turbulence in this case? How could Dr. Smith create more turbulence? Would probably be to put her in the office, because it would cause cascading results. She was unable to work in the office during the summer, during the low traffic areas, and they actually asked him to place her in there at high areas so that she would be unable to do the job, which would cause the people in the office to have to correct what she's done wrong. things that teachers need would not get to them because she's not able to do it quickly. And then it would cascade to the parents and the students. A creative solution, I would think, would be to at least offer some kind of professional development. Maybe buddy her with another co-worker so that she, watches them. How would lowering the level of turbulence assist in the situation? Well, that would avoid the cascade effect on the teachers, the parents, and the students. What ethical lens should Dr. Smith use to solve this dilemma? I would think the ethic of profession, because he has to look at what's in the best interest of the students, and he's got to get out the forms, make sure that everything gets done for the No Child Left Behind legislation. And why would the lens provide the most assistance in the decision making? Because he really has to focus on what is best for students. That, to me, should be the top priority. There's more lens that could assist him, and I think it would be the lens of ethic of care for moral decision making. When he's doing this, I mean, he has to consider, what's going to happen to her. I mean, you have to have some kind of compassion for the people that, work there. If not, everybody's disposable, and their time invested in places it's not valued. I really do think that she could have been given some kind of let her know up front, even though she was reassigned, but she still had to work in the office. I think that she should have been given some kind of professional development to help better herself, and even team her up with someone, and let her know up front what's going on. You have to be able to perform this job because this is where you've been assigned in the summer. Instead of, well, I'm just not going to do this again because she messed up too much stuff, but it never said that she got trained. The Code of Ethic of Critique assists Dr. Smith. I would think that it would, because he does have to look at the policies and the laws and rights, and there's a due process to get rid of someone. You just can't start writing it down without them knowing what's happening. Where does the ethic of profession fit in this dilemma? I would think it has to fit in everywhere, because the profession has to do with what's the best of the student and what are the personnel and professional codes of the educational leader. They have to consider that. And this could, affect a lot of things. And it also could bring down the morale there, because even though she can't do the job, people don't like to see that happens to someone, that you are disposed. And it sends a message, and it's sometimes a negative message if you don't reach out to someone and try to help them. I mean, we're there we're educators, and she's not, we're not above not helping Mrs. Martin. We should help to try to help her to do the job. I think the building clerk that that was going to get the 12-month contract, she would have to understand that Mrs. Martin already has that contract. And as far as the school, you just can't keep trying to hire and hire and hire to compensate what someone can't do. But first, you have to make sure that you help who you already have assigned there. This particular case study to me was very difficult, because you can kind of feel that in a lot of ways it's wrong. If she couldn't do the job, they just reassigned her, but still kept her in the office. I really think that, there would have to be some kind of due process, and the fact that the superintendent and human resources just made a plan to get rid of her, it's very, to me, it's very scary, because, we all get to a point that, we have to learn new ways, and I would hope that we're not, disposable just because we didn't learn right away or it was difficult for us. And I guess that's the way I felt about this case study. I felt sadness on both sides because he clearly did not want to do what they asked him to do, because he said like it felt like he was not, at the same place anymore. In case study 6.3, balancing responsibility, monitoring attendance at school, or being an advocate for the children. In this case study, Mrs. O'Hara, guidance counselor at Sloan Elementary School, is watching the attendance or non-attendance of Lydia and Jake, their transfers that have excessive absences. Their school board policy is expected communication from the school to the parents to remind them of the district policy. They also have a state requirement from compulsory attendance, and included the tardy to school letters after 5 absences. They have a sibling that is in danger because of being absent so much, of being removed from a school kindergarten roster. Other staff members have had the concerns in their home because of their home environment, their nutrition, academic performance, behavior, and excessive attendance. However, if they're not in school, then their performance would decline because they're not being taught, because they're not there. And their behavior would, it would counteract that, because they're not getting the education, they're falling behind. They probably are acting out. And a parent that doesn't live with them is aware, but doesn't want to lose privileges, so they don't call the services to let them know what they've been told. However, in this, it did say that other staff members were aware of the home environment and nutrition. So I would think that the school would have to act as an advocate for the children instead of just monitoring the attendance, because there is a problem. I mean, it's a hotline call, really, because you suspect something, then you can go have it checked out. That would be what they would have to do, because this is concerning. I think the level of turbulence in this case is light. And I think that if Mrs. O'Hara doesn't do any more than sending out letters and talking to the parent in following this policy, I think that the level of turbulence will increase for her. And I believe that it would be more so for the teachers, because they are having to deal with the learning and behavior side of the students not being in school. I would think that their behavior would be a result of them not being there and trying to compensate for not knowing. That's usually when students act out, is when they don't know, and they do other things to try to bring attention not to their lack of learning. I think people in this, they are experiencing different turbulence. I think the teachers is greater, and then the turbulence for the students, I would think that it's I think that it would be severe, because they're kids, and they're no one is really thinking about the fact that they could be being harmed at home, and they're concerned about the absences, but this is a pattern. They've done it before in other schools. They just got back in the home. They need to do more than send out a letter. They need to act quickly, because they should not be in the home anymore if this behavior and what they're doing is continuing. That's the reason we're out of the home. But what impact has the ethic of care in this dilemma? Well, I believe the ethic of care in this dilemma, they're not really making a moral decision, because they could have done more. They're just going by policy. That's what I think. that they're just going by the policy, because if immediately when students come in, you're kind of looking to see where they've come from and what's going on, but they didn't start checking that until after the students had been absent, which to me, new students come in and then they're suddenly absent. Before the first letter went out, I believe that they should have already, tried to investigate, well, what's going on here with the students, because you never know when, people are on the run. So I think that you have to check it out quickly, because you have that child. You have to make sure the child is the first focus in anything. I don't believe that. I think the laws are blanketed in this situation. I think that the youth services should have been called way before the kids started being absent this much. And really, because the child is in danger of being removed from a roster in kindergarten because of absences. So that really should have been, flagged immediately and not wait till it get to this point. But she's wanting Mr. Shuey, the father, the natural father, to make the call, but she's already had staff members, relay these same things. So she should make the call, not Mr. Shuey. You can't depend on somebody you can't depend on the parents to take care of the child if they hadn't already done it. You have to take it upon yourself to do that, because the interest is in the students. And they're the ones that are missing out in this lag of time and going on with, checking to see if they're absent every day. I think that you should do something immediately and don't let it wait, because they can always do welfare checks to make sure that there's not any drug, going on in the home. They can make sure the children don't have any bruises on them. And that's where it would go. It would just be a welfare check. You could do that besides just waiting for someone else to take it upon themselves and call, the services, because they have been in the court systems before. I would think that would be what they would do when they continue to be absent. And if it is legitimate that they don't have, a way to get them there, there are ways to get children to school. I don't know, surely they have a transportation system there, but, at times when we've had this happen with students, we've actually sent our the director over transportation to pick up students in the school vehicle, because the priority is that they are in school learning. I think that Mrs. O'Hara has her professional responsibility to make sure that she is focused not on policy, but on the students and being an advocate for the students. In case study 6.4, should I stay or should I go? Leadership turnover and its effects on schools. Amy Kozlowski accepted a principal position at Bellevue Elementary following a male in charge for 14 years. The transition was smooth. However, she has a commute for 45 minutes in the morning and 45 minutes or more going home, depending on the traffic. There are 2 classrooms with emotional support students. The prior year, there was only 1. This classroom is staffed with a guest teacher, an emergency certified, a teacher right out of college with no experience in public schools or with emotional students. All students have been hospitalized at least one time for mental health rehabilitation. Ms. Kozlowski has experience with students with similar problems. She has made positive changes in the building. The increased intensity of the handling of these student cases is hard to cope with. She has graduate classes that are 2 hours away, and she's also in an internship with the assistant superintendent. While she's there, she notices that there's an ongoing battle between the special ed department and the educational leader's role in the school. The students that are in the class, the emotional class, require extensive therapy, medication intervention. She thought that by the school could help the students by their individualized education plan, the IEP, could have been better applied, placing responsibility on the parents, like getting them help before they actually went into the school. Then Ms. Kozlowski becomes engaged, which before she was only worried about, she didn't worry about the commute so much because she didn't have a family to worry about her or get home to prepare meals. But now she is engaged and she gets offered a new job that is closer to her home. It has more students, but she wouldn't have the ongoing problem of the 2 classes and the rift that is between the special education department and the educational leader's role. Okay, the current level of turbulence for the Bellevue Elementary, I think that for the entire school is light. There's some ongoing issues, but there's little or no disruption. For the principal, I believe that it is moderate because she knows that there's widespread issues in specific areas, as like in the special education department. And for the special education teachers, that area, I believe it's severe because they have to be having a feeling of crisis if they are not trained. On the actions of the principal, what would cause the turbulence to go up? And I believe that it would be if she does nothing about the class and she continues to let it go on without providing them with some kind of professional development to train that staff on mental health issues. That would be the thing that she would need to do to make it go down, to make it go up, is just do nothing, because that's going to continue to go up because it went from 1 class to 2 classes and they still have the same underqualified people in the classes. Are the education laws to take into account their effect on regular education students? To a point, but they are the voice of special education students. That's the voice that they don't have. They don't have, some don't have the mentality of the regular education students. And that is why when they are suspended, if there's so many days, you have to provide them with instruction. Whether, if it's at home, you have to provide them with instruction from a qualified teacher, because a week for them in education may set them back 2 months, while another student, a regular student, can be out and go back right back where they were. They pick right up where they left off. But the special needs that a child has for their learning, they have to have laws to protect them. Is it an ethical decision for the good of one student that ultimately causes the disruption of several other students and staff members? In school, I've went through this, and sometimes I think it's not ethical. But when you look at the child that's causing the disruption, if we don't do something, who will? So, I mean, you have to look at the needs of the child with the special needs. You have to, what's going to make them be successful? And do I think we should drop everything, and leave the regular education students? No, I do not think that is very, it's ethical to do that, because you're responsible for their education too. When mental health issues are present, where should the public schools draw the line in regard to responsibility? I do believe that the parents have to have a responsibility in this. However, when the parents don't take the responsibility, um, we all know that's where the schools have to go in and take that up. And because of the increase in mental health issues, there was a law that came in to effect, I believe it was 2015, where it was federal funding, was provided to train school staff on mental health issues, and they could establish school-based mental health issues services. And this is something that has really changed our school because, they come to the classroom and they may pull a student for mental health issues, where that same student may be pulled for special education classes or go to occupational therapy, anything that they need to help them to make them be, successful in our school system. They are provided with that through the school, which I think is a good thing that we're able to do that, because before, when we started getting an increase of students, we didn't know what to do because we're not trained for this. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist. So this allowed us to have some training in disruptive and behavior in the classroom, and what to do to keep the other kids safe, and what to do to help calm down the students that's having the outburst. If the principal decided to leave and go to the Happy Valley Elementary School, the person that's going to benefit from this decision is her, because the hours that she's working, I'm sure that she's not even applying some self-care because she doesn't have time to do that. I believe that the school itself will be the person that doesn't benefit from this, because in her situation, she was accepted. They said that she got things done. She knows she's identified a problem, within her first year of the special ed department. And it's kind of like she's paving the road, but it's really not really smooth and drivable because she may leave. I think that in that case, she has a priority to make sure, she's a priority in an ethical decision to stay because of what she already knows. She could finish that out. She could even relocate, for that matter, because I would have a hard time leaving knowing that I just left things, dangling and undone, because those students and those teachers and parents, they start all back over again, and the other person has to figure out what's going on. So that sets them even, further behind with progressing on for the betterment of the school. I believe that it would be at this time unethical for her to leave the district, because she has so many things that are not done. And a change in the leadership in an organization, does that differ from a change in leadership in other fields? In the change in the entire organization, yes. But I do think if you have a change in leadership in the coaching staff or reading coach, yes, it changes for everybody, because you have to learn what their expectations are, and they have to, assess the weak areas of a organization. So everybody really has to start all over again when there is a change in leadership. The ethic of care, with this district's point of view, they have a moral decision really to do something about that special education, because that they're not making they're not basing that on, it's kind of like they're just putting people in there and they're not fixing their need of increasing students. So, I think that they are not applying the ethic of care, because to me, they're just, buying time and going on. But, special education department, they also have funding that they could apply to this situation, but it seems like there's a push and pull on, who should do that. The ethic of care, if the principal leaves, I think that no, she's not doing it for the, she's got loyalty and trust, and if she leaves that, I don't think that she is applying that. I don't. I think that she is trying to, fix the situation for herself. But like driving that long, anybody would want to. But I still think, again, I'd have to relocate for a couple of years to make sure that these things that she's identified are fixed, and for the betterment of the students. Because if she leaves, I would always have that in the back of my mind. Or what if I stayed? And those things were fixed, how those students would progress. And I would probably always think, well, it'd take someone else a whole year, or they might not ever, realize that, depending on their style of leadership. Case study 6.5, double trouble, accountability versus responsibility, high stakes testing. Mr. Thomas is a principal at the Magnificent Charter High School located in Chicago, Illinois. It's in existence for 4 years. It serves students in a disadvantaged Chicago section of Chicago. For the past 2 years, it's met its AYP, and he has had an increase in Asian students from 13% to 26%. In order to meet the needs of the increase of students, he's hired bilingual teachers that can speak Vietnamese and a couple that can speak Spanish. If he makes the AYP, he will receive a $12,000 bonus for excellent service to the organization. His school culture is excellent. The students like the new staff that he's hired, and then he finds out from a student that has gotten a scholarship to go to college that he has to give thanks to Ms. Rodriguez because she read the reading portion of the test to him. As he gathers information, he finds out that Mrs. Rodriguez, a new teacher, was told by a teacher that was already seasoned that she's done it in the past and that it's okay. Well, then he is faced with the dilemma of what to do with this situation. In this case study, I think that Mr. Thomas has an obligation to the school board to let them know what has happened. I think that he could also go in and take the scores of the students and recalculate the scores for himself, while he's sharing that with the board, to let them know that, the school did meet the AYP, or maybe they didn't. But I mean, to show what would have happened if there was, those scores were not included. I think that the organization is stable at this time. However, if he doesn't become more transparent about this and show people what happened, it could lead to a domino effect, and the turbulence level could go up because the teachers know that he knows. And when they know that there's a wrongdoing, then that would cause them to continue and maybe even do more. And then maybe other faculty members find out and they start doing the same thing. Next thing you know, this school's on the news. So I think that he needs to be transparent all the way across. I think that the teachers should be reprimanded. Ms. Rodriguez, maybe she didn't know, but I know when you do give tests, that you have to sign off for confidentiality on it, then that you're not going to look at the test or you're not going to read the test. Maybe that's not the case in this situation, but to not know, I think maybe they did know. I think that they were considering the ethic of care of the students. However, the ethics of profession they weren't, because there are, policies against this. And it's really sad that our Department of Education doesn't make sure that all students. I don't think that testing a child that speaks Vietnamese and it all being in English is. I don't think that that's measuring their ability if they can't read it. I mean, they may be a genius, but you won't know by that test because it's only in English. I do think that they should make accommodations for this. I don't agree with it just having to be in English. I think that there would be some way to translate it and put it into, other languages. Of course, that information would have to be taken and given to the State Department on that child's behalf, but it can be done, and I think that it would be fair. In this case study, 6.6 immunization, school district accountability versus parent responsibility. Dr. Connolly, the principal of Harmony Elementary School. In this district, there are 12,000 in the district were scheduled to be excluded from school because they had not received state required immunizations. In this school, they give 8 months for the parents to comply with the state regulations. They send out letters to begin with, and they send them again at January. But because the school had so many, like some high schools had 200 or more, they were told not to call because it wasn't fair, that they continue to call. But Dr. Conley has the nurse to continue to call the parents. The number moves from 30 to 11. At the end, he worries that when it comes time on May 1st that he has to turn away students because it is the parents' responsibility. I consider the level of turbulence for Dr. Conley to be moderate and for Mrs. Wong to be severe, because with her, if those 11 students, she's worried about their health and making sure that they're not spreading, chicken pox, or they're not getting chicken pox. And Dr. Conley, he's gone from light to moderate, but he may be, that could, at the end of this, it could be shifting to a little bit more because he's still worried about the students' education. Even at the end, when it got down to 11 students, he didn't want to have to turn them away. He wanted them to, he was still worried about those students, that it's not their responsibility, it's the parents' responsibility. So I think that Dr. Conley has, his heart is in the right place. He's making decisions because of his moral values. I believe that Staley could probably, to decrease the potential turbulence, would be maybe ask the state for an extension because it's so many students. But this would cause a cascade because, well, they did it this year, they'll do it next year. And plus, you have the people that did get it done in the amount of time, that sends a message to them that the school doesn't mean what they say. Does the law restrict an individual's right or protect an individual? Yes. In this particular case, I believe that they are protecting students by the law of having them go and get immunizations. And I believe that the interest of this law is created to keep students safe and other people safe, adults safe. I believe that Dr. Conley was in the best interest when he ignored that he was told not to call, that he continued to have them call. And he talks about it considering unfair for the nurses to call. No, I don't think it was unfair because their job is health and keeping people safe from being able to,
spread disease or sickness. So no, I don't think it was unfair for them. They only had 30 students to call, and his priorities are with his building and his students. And that's the way I think that he's thinking about what's best for the students there. I do think that Dr. Conley handled the situation appropriately, and I think they were both they put the students at the center of this process. That's what I think, is that they didn't deny, and it's at the end, like I said, he was still trying to figure out, how do I tell these kids that they can't come because it's their parents' responsibility. I often wondered why they didn't, like do a recording and send, or have, like the parents sign a paper, because usually if you get that signature, that gets their attention, and that could have gone even hand delivered, because to me, not being having your immunizations is serious, especially now with that we've had COVID. We don't want anything to pop up again and cause us to shut down, and you never know.